So welcome to another edition of LiveShiur. Nice, fella, that's good. It's okay, I say it like that all. No, I say it like that all. If I told you 15, 20 years ago that I would be introducing Rabbi Dr. Wolf, or he would be being introduced by me, both of us would probably think that was the most absurd thing ever. We go back, I can tell the story about the pool ball, right? Right. One of the first times I met Hillel, he was, how old were you, like 3, 4?
I don't know the story. You know the
All right,
story.
he was like 3 or 4, and I was at his father's house. Let's just say that I was teasing Hillel, and he took a pool ball and threw it at me. Like a real pool ball, all right? So from that day on, I knew the guy was going to be a serious learner, because he had the natural youthful aggression that's required to succeed in learning. But what was amazing about, I guess the real time we became very close is when I moved back down to Florida for dental school. So I had the schus to learn with his entire family, I should say. I've certainly mentioned his father many times before, and I truly believe his father is one of the greatest Talmid Chacham I've ever met in my life. His brilliance is, there's no way to describe it other than just experience it. And it impacted my learning tremendously. So the 4 years I was down there, I spent many years in yeshiva in Far Rockaway, but in many ways the ability to learn with both his father and the rest of his family probably had more of an impact on my learning than even being in yeshiva itself, just insofar as being able to formulate independent svaras and clarity and precision. Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Dr. Wolf, just like his father, Rabbi Dr. Wolf, is taken after his father and his mother in many, many ways. I guess the best way to put it is for the next 3 weeks, he'll be around yeshiva here and there. So we'll call him our scholar in residence for the next couple of weeks. I urge you to take advantage of his time here. He'll definitely be giving shiur to my guys for a couple times. He'll probably give one shiur klali, and as much as more I can push him and extract from him, I'm going to try to. But you should take advantage of the opportunity that you have here, because he is a tremendous Talmid Chacham. And as far as his background is concerned, he can talk more about himself. As far as his background for now, he is literally following in his father's footsteps. He's in Pitt Medical School, fourth year. Yeah. With his hope is to go into. You got it already, right?
No, yeah. We'll know the match.
So his hope is to get to do dermatology, just like his father. If you ever have any questions about the skin issues, his father's the right guy to go to. And so what he's going to talk about tonight a little bit is something that we're going to talk about Sunday nights, which is most of you guys will be in some way going back to when you go back to America, you'll be re-entering the college world and secular world to some degree. And he's faced many, many situations, especially in the medical field, where you're dealing with how to construct or how to follow, what halakha to follow when it comes to dealing with patients, etc. So for the next little while, he will regale you with his information. So the floor is yours, buddy.
All right. You're too kind.
My brother would say like to say, isn't it?
What?
That's exactly what my brother would say.
So I'm finishing up Pitt Med, and one thing I came across, you have to do rotations, and like oftentimes you have to get there early. Also in Pittsburgh, it's actually very far west, but we're still in the Eastern time zone, so our Zmanim are very late. Nate's gets sometimes to be 7:30, and oftentimes you have to be in the hospital before then. So the question is what? I mean, I have other halachic things I came across, but in terms of tefillah, just the most basic, we look at tefillah and we say it. We say Sarf with brachos. We do Sugid Zimra, Birchos Kriya Shema, and then we're Omer Lefnei Hashem. We have Shemon Esrei. So we oftentimes we just think of that as a one unit, but there's actually quite a few. You could break it down into more than one halachic issue, and if you have to be in the hospital at 5 a.m. in surgery, what do you do? Your time is not your own. You often don't have, you're being told what to do, and you got to be in certain surgeries. You have to be with a certain doctor, and how do you maneuver with all the obligations of tefillah? Yeah, sure.
Couldn't you say that you're pater because of Koch Nalesh?
So that's, as a medical student, you're not really involved in that. Like,
I thought you said surgery. So
well, yeah, I'm as a medical student, you go into you are part of the surgical team, quote unquote, and you are not actually responsible for anything. You're there to learn. Oftentimes, it involves doing menial labor, retracting. You're not fully necessary. If you weren't there, they'd be fine. So it's hard to say that there's real pikuach nefesh. There is vis-a-vis the attending physician, the residents, but as a medical student, you're really not. And even still, though, if we want to actually just start breaking down the mitzvahs, that would be fine. You'd say maybe you're putter because of, in terms of an aseh, to be misbala. But there's an isser. You're not allowed to eat before you daven. It's an isteraisa. It's from the pasuk of lo sochel al hadam. It's a lav shebechlolos. That prohibition actually has many. One is not to actually eat blood, but another one is you're not allowed to eat before you daven. So what do you do about that? Now, there's a zman. So you're waking up at 5 a.m, very far before alos, dawn, and you need coffee. You need some food in you, but you haven't davened yet. You just davened Marv like 4 hours earlier, 5 hours earlier. It's not, it's not morning yet. And what are you supposed to do? So, yeah.
Can you eat? What can you eat?
So that's okay, fine. So you could eat up until Alos.
Up until
Alos. And now you're busy during Alos. You're right. So what would you do that? After that. But you're right. No, it's good. Keep me straight. What? And then, we could break down. Then you also have Kriya Shema is different than Tefillah, right? And Kriya Shema, it has a much earlier Zman. It's an hour earlier at the cutoff. And also doesn't have as many, in terms of like Kavana, right? Tefillah requires Kavana, right? And Shema, for the first pasuk, you have to have Kavana of Kabbalas Omelchu Shemayim. You have to understand, right, that God is the Creator and He's one. But that's for a second, right? So really, you could just, it's possible. So it's a question of, you have to menu. How do you think about going, through these things? And one thing was actually, I guess I'll reflect on it after. But so I asked the Shaila to my Rosh Yeshiva about what to do about eating, and he actually said that you could. Tefillah is composed of 3. When we say tefillah, I mean like Shemona Esrei, right? 3 components of Shavach, Bakash, and Hodah, right? Praising God, requesting from Him, and then thanking Him. So he told me that you could construct those same elements through Berachos HaShachar. Those are, and then at the end of Berachos HaShachar you have the Yehi Ratzon. Right, so you have in Berachos HaShachar you'll have Shavach, and then the Yehi Ratzon is Bakasha, and then at the end if you say Elokai Neshama, so then you have Modeh Ani L'Fanecha. What is it?
Sorry, you're gonna confuse yourself.
They don't say Elokai Neshama. That's right.
No one knows what they're doing. Right. So if you have, you could rebuild
through the elements, you could basically have a kiyum tefillah. So even though you're not omed lifnei Hashem, and you don't have that state, but since you had the shavach, you had the bakasha and the hodah of modan lifnei Hashem elokai elokei v'sai, ribon kol masim adon kol neshamos, baruch atah Hashem al-chazir neshamos v'zkarim meisim. So you have all three components, and vis-a-vis the Isser, even though you're not Mekayim your tefillah, because if we were Mekayim our tefillah, we wouldn't be able to say tefillah again, right? You could have the elements vis-a-vis the Isser. Yeah.
Can you just say Havinenu?
Yeah, but let's say
Too early.
it's too early. It's before Nate's. It's right.
You have time to eat, but you don't have time to daven?
Well, so, I mean, yeah, sometimes you're around the table talking where you have to be involved. You can't just be in a corner davening.
So in other words, you don't have time for anything but what you're doing.
Yeah, your time is not your own. You don't know where you're going to be. You don't even know if you could get 10 minutes. If you could get 10 minutes, great. And there have been plenty of times I've been on rotations and I've been able to, step out and find a little corner, and that's one thing.
Right. Okay. I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, and it's difficult because you, like we said, for tefillah requires kavanah. So you kind of have to be in a state where you could free yourself. Whether you're going to have the greatest, there's levels of kavanah. I'm not necessarily saying you're going to have the highest level of Rabbi Akiva when he was bouncing around the corners of the room because he just didn't know where he was. That's how engaged he. I'm not even talking about. I'm talking the basic level where you could clear your mind and you could just daven.
Right.
If you can't do that, then you really can't daven.
Right.
I mean, you're probably putter, but you still, there are other factors involved. Yeah.
I mean, there are a term to eat and drink before davening. Why do you choose this sort of? I mean, obviously this isn't a simple halacha either. Sort of they have to.
What are the heterim?
Mr. Burns down, you're allowed to drink coffee if you don't put milk or anything or.
Okay. Do you like your coffee that way?
Before. It's not.
But that's also, if I'm not mistaken, that's in order to have kavanah in order to daven.
Right, well, it's not.
Oh, but this is not. But it's not that's saying if it's impossible for you to daven.
Right.
Right. Because you're not going to
daven anyways after you're doing it for work.
What?
You're saying because you're doing it to work.
Right. Exactly. I'm not. It's not in order for me
to
daven. It's just in order for me not fall asleep during surgery.
Oh, okay.
So that was the first thing. You could get a key in terms of the Isser, right? That's an important thing, is that since it's a separate Isser, as opposed to the mitzvahs tefillah, because if you're not mekayim that mitzvahs tefillah, but you can't tell me that the person put his personal needs before he was mishabeach, he had bakasha, and he was an hodayah to God. So that's the first. I think it's important to understand how the halacha is not just jumble. We don't just. We do jumble it because we have a seder tefillah, and that's important as well. There's kiyumim, right? There's fulfillments in how the tefillah is built. That's why the Chachamim did it. You're involved in Pesukei de Zimra, right? Which is shevach of God and reminding you of the ideas of God as the creator, and then which is going to bring you into Shema of Kabbalah Samuch Shemayim, right? And then you'll be ready to really stand, to be in a state where you're standing, you're a reality before Him, you're Omed Lifnei Hashem, and you could really beseech Him. And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful construct how the Chachamim did it. But in terms of the strict halachic formulations, we have to break them down, and we have to really study them, right? So that was the first thing. Now comes Hanetz and the Chiyuv of Kriya Shema hits. So if you look at Kriya Shema, you have Kriya Shema and the brachos. Now Kriya Shema is a mitzvah d'oraisa, which is pretty short. It'd take you, 2 minutes to say? 3?
Just the first problem.
What?
Just the first paragraph. It's the rest, I think.
I think we hold all three
I thought all
paragraphs.
three are the last two are Durban, you say them with version of matter.
Pretty sure that we hold it's d'oraisa. I think it's a machlokas in the Gemara, right? About I think we paskin that it's that Shema.
Shema Machlokas if at all it's Deraisa. And we paskin it is Deraisa, only Shema and Baruch Shem in the first Vahata.
That requires kavana, and I think it's only the first pasuk. But it is a chiyuv d'oraisa.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, but the brachos are d'Rabbanan. So at least you have to say Shema, or you could you could also say Shema, and then have the brachos, because the brachos are also part of the Seder Tefillah. So you could attach them back to Tefillah later. Yeah.
Is Kriya Shema in its Zman a Deoraisa?
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. B'shach b'chov k'mecha. Right. So if you.
I thought it was just right. One's in the morning, one's at night.
But the Zman is
in the Zman.
In the Zman of morning, right? So Shema, I would figure out that would be pretty easy to do. I would actually not do it with its brachos at that time. But even if you did it with its brachos, right? So then there's a principle of smichas gula tefillah, right? So we have to take that up. That smichas gula tefillah, it's not a chiyuv, it's a kiyum, right? It's a kiyum ha-mitzvah, and it's important. But if you can't do it, there's certain shitos. I mean, they say by machlokas, I think the Rambam and Tosfos by Mariv. If you come in to shul and they're davening Shemona Esrei, or they're gonna get right. Well, if you come in, then they say you do Shemona Esrei, and you do the brachos and Kriya Shema later. Well, let's say they're going to daven early. Let's say they're going to daven early before the Zman of Kriya Shema, right? Because we have to be machmer, right? So there's machlokas, the Rambam and Tosos, whether you say Kriya Shema with the brachos and then you just repeat Kriya Shema, the parshas again later, right? And when you do say Kriya Shema and the brachos, you also go through tefillah in order to maintain smichas gula tefillah. And the Rambam holds no. You just say tefillah, and you'll actually do Kriya Shema and the brachos later. So you see, in other words, the Rambam says, let's say it's like half an hour after Shkia, and Seis Midaraisa, the Machmir time, is not for 45 minutes, hypothetically. And now your shul's going to daven, which often happens on a Shabbos, right? Friday night. So the Rambam would say that you should daven, Shemona Esrei, but not say Kriya Shema or the brachos. And you just do that later. But you see, my point of bringing that in is you see that the smichas gula tefillah is not ma'akev. It's important. It's a kiyum. But you could have the Kriya Shema on its own without the tefillah. They can't exist, right? And when you're in a certain situation like this, you might just only be able to do that limited thing. So I would do Kriya Shema whenever I'd have a chance once Nate's came around. I often would not be able to do Berchos Kriya Shema. And there were times when I was in the middle of a surgery and I just had to say Kriya Shema, which was possible to do. I had a mask on and, I I saw the time because I got busy with things prior to that, and I just said Kriya Shema while the surgery was going on. And then it came to what do you call it? Then it came to tefillah. So oftentimes I was not able to get out for tefillah, or at least be able to get out and also have sufficient kavanah. Just to be in a spot where no one's going to pass me in the hospital and see me. If I could, I would, but there were often times when I didn't. So now the question is, was I amazed? Was I considered amazed in terms of tashlumin? Right? Are you guys familiar with tashlumin?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
So tashlumin, right, is that, for anyone who is not super familiar, tashlumin is that if you are a shogeg, or you were an anus, right? If you forgot, you made some kind of mistake, or you were forced into a situation, you could daven 2 Shemona Esreis in the next month, and it'll be related to the tefillah that you missed. So since it's not just a shogeg. The Mishnah says, the Shulchan Aruch says openly. So it's an honest. So in this situation, it wasn't because I was just shirking my responsibility for tefillah, right? So I would be considered, if I couldn't have kavanah or I couldn't get away, I would be considered an honest, right? I was forced, and then I would be able to. I do 2 Shemona Esreis later if I couldn't do it. Yeah.
So let me get this straight. From let's just say from you can technically daven tefillah from Mishiach here or from Olos.
From a los, but it has to be a shas al-chak, right?
Right. Okay. So we're down from Olos. It's from Olos till Chatzos. You did not have let's say 3 or 4 minutes to daven, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just
Yeah.
It's not like davening bisman.
No.
It's
right. Because you're right. Because we're pretty in terms of the derabbanans. I was being pretty makel on these things.
Right.
I was trying to get at most the deraisas.
Okay.
So sometimes you go from surgery to surgery, whatever, and it's not even like that you're necessarily in surgery doing these things. You kind of just have to be with the residents tell you where to go. It's just you're not your own person. So you can't say, I don't think that really, it's not because you're shirking you're responsible. That's what amazed means, right? Is that you just didn't care. You forget about this. It's not even that you made it, even if you thought you were going to be able to daven in an hour, and so you didn't daven immediately, you didn't do mincha gedolah because you thought you were going to be able to do, in an hour you were going to be able to daven, something happened, right? You just got busy. I don't think that's not either shirking your responsibility, because there you really were trying to be a shomer ha-mitzvah, right? You just, something got in your way.
Right.
So, 1 second. So that, so since that's the case, I thought I would daven 2 minchas, and then I would be able to pull it off. Yeah.
This is a halachic question. After how many times does that become? I assume, for example, if someone put himself in a situation intentionally where he was going to be forced, then that wouldn't count as something able to be touch limit. But I suppose in your case, being as it's sporadic, that it might not necessarily be considered putting yourself in a situation where you're forced. But I guess it would depend on how often, or is there any laws of how likely it is that you will not be able to do Shemona, which would hold you liable for putting yourself in a situation?
Right. That's a good question. That they don't really talk about that. No one really talks about, and I don't know if it's necessarily a time. Let's say I'm in surgery for 2 months, right? My surgical rotation was 2 months, 6 weeks.
Okay.
So, do you say for that 6 weeks I put myself in,
I'm saying, like,
they talk in situations of traveling. Those are situations where
Right.
it comes up. Like a guy goes on he's going on a business trip back in the old days, right? So you're in the horse and buggy for 6 hours in the morning. There's no way the horse and buggy can stop, and you can't have kabbalah on like it's bouncing around and stuff like that, and smells and stuff. There's just no way to be able to do it.
Does that count as shogeg?
The guy, what's he supposed to do?
That's what I'm saying. I know by like drinking, like if you get yourself drunk, you're not allowed to make tashlumin. If you knew that by getting yourself drunk, you wouldn't be able to daven, even though technically you're in a situation of onus or shogeg. Being as you intentionally put yourself in that situation, you cannot do tashlumin.
Well, let's say you're chayiv, and let's say it was a case of chatzi lachem on Yontif. So now chatzos comes, you're chayiv.
Sure.
So you tell me now. So maybe you drink. You're allowed to drink 5 to drink. Would that mean you're supposed to daven before, but let's say there's not always a minyan, right? You're supposed to daven with a minyan. The minyan's not going to start till right before Shkia. So you drink. Now you got lost in your drinking, right?
So I don't know.
So I don't know. I don't think that would necessarily be a maze there. I mean, that's what you got lost in it.
Right.
Let's say, maybe if you knew you had. That's what I'm saying. Like at a certain point, there is an intuition. Halacha could only.
Right.
There are principles, right? That's why we have svar, right? I mean, there is halacha l'maisa, and it's important. But really, the halacha l'maisa is an outgrowth of the svar. So if the person set up a situation in his life where his business would never allow him to do something, it wasn't just a happenstance occurrence.
Right.
That'd be different, than that would be a different situation. But
that's what I said. Like you don't necessarily know if you hope to have time, and you sometimes do have time.
Right. Exactly. But if I set up, let's say, if I set up my job where, I don't have a good example, where I can't get away for 5 minutes.
You picked your shifts specifically during those.
What?
Let's say you picked your shifts specifically.
Right, exactly. Let's say, yeah.
No, actually, I'll give him a common example that happens. I don't know if you miss Montfila, but theoretically it could happen. A lot of people in Israel work American hours. So they end up running into a situation where they're working, let's say, they start at 2 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes they'll end at after Chatzos. That's their day. You know what I mean? So that could be that kind of situation where, So, but just to add one thing that he's saying, you guys will find this emerging as early. In my career, when I was practicing more often, I always found the problem to be more of mincha, because you'll hit that once you get out.
Right.
When mincha becomes a big
especially
issue.
in New York.
Yeah, like when I was seeing patients, so you can't stop in the middle of a patient and say, okay, well I got out mincha now. It's not going to happen. So obviously, ideally, you try to set up your day. I used to always try to set up like a block of time, like 10 minutes, so I can stop the daven mincha. But when you guys go to college, just think about these scenarios. You didn't think about daven mincha ahead of time. Turns out you have a quiz in class, and you notice it's like 20 minutes to shkia, and you can't leave the classroom. It's impossible. Right? You're not going to be able to have kabbalah. So what are you going to do in that situation? So it's the kind of situation you were put into, and you can rely on tashlumin. Let's put aside the issue of Mara, but the question of did you over amazing or not becomes an issue. But I found there were plenty of times I was involved in like closings for dental practices. There were 6-hour affairs, and there's no way I could not leave the room under any circumstances for any reason whatsoever. They're going to come up no matter what. No matter what job you go into, they will come up. So you should be aware of that. Even china.
2 things. Is it better to daven without kavanah than to not daven at all?
To daven without kavanah?
Or lesser, like let's say you like for case where we're gonna sure like let's say you're sitting down you can sit down for 3 minutes in between patients and you just like say it.
Well, if you could really if you can't have kavanah perish hamilim.
If you perish hamilim, but that's it.
And you could really focus that you're only lifnei Hashem. So then if you don't know that you're only lifnei Hashem, then it's not a
so let's say you get one thought. I'm saying right. Most people's regular showing after they're not exactly full time.
Yes, true. But you have to say, but there's a basic thing. If you're not in the state, then you're not doing anything.
Right.
The Rabbi says that openly.
So
right. So you have to know that you're only lifnei Hashem.
Right. No, for sure.
So then it's a basic thing. Now you're chayiv. I would say halachically, you're chayiv to engage in that tefillah.
Right.
So now you can't give as long as it has a shame tefillah, right? As long as it can be identified as a tefillah,
It's better than touchline.
yeah. So then you I would say that now comes the chiyuv,
Right.
is chal on you, and it forces you to engage. That's how the halachic system works.
Right.
So and if you didn't, then that would probably be amazing.
So is touchline the fact that the Zman Chiyuv never fell on you, so it just falls on you in the next Zman Chiyuv?
It's that the Zman chiyuv did fall on you.
No, I thought the perfect case of touchline is that being as you never were in a situation where you could have said tefillah.
But the chiyuv was chal on you, right? It's just you couldn't be makayim that chiyuv because of mezid or anus.
Right.
So now in the next time, the zman that's smucha to it is still related to it, right? So it gets a shame. Let's say it happened in Shachris, and now you're in Mincha. So since Mincha is mitzuraf, right? It's samach to Shachris. So now you could produce a shame tefillas Shachris al yedei the tziruf, right? I mean that's really the concept of tashlum, right? So that's why I would often have to use that.
One last thing.
Yeah, sure.
I think I might be forgetting, but I thought Rosh Hashanah said something like you're allowed to. There's a problem with reading Shtar Joseph and Shabbos. So he says, I think he's in medical students right? He said medical students are allowed to read their medical books because that counts as a concept.
No, the half-act.
No, the
Oh,
other.
medical students cannot.
Right, he had a funny thing. He wanted to say that Moshe doesn't buy that, but he wanted to say that that a doctor not only can he read
He must.
medical literature on Shabbos, but he's chayav to. It's like a mitzvah because he's improving his ability to save people's lives. So, but that were the case, he says the medical students can't read that stuff on Shabbos.
Why?
Because they're not involved in saving lives.
So what does Ramosh say?
Students.
What does
Ramosh, but Ramosh would always hold it's it's just because it's mada. It's
Right,
science.
right,
That's
science. So you're gonna have to tell me.
Can or you
So
can't.
not because right.
You can.
Can.
According to Ramosh, you could.
So there's no Rav who would say that becoming a doctor is not considered, is considered a life-saving or.
No, it could be life-saving, but I'm saying as a medical student, your role is not saving lives. I never worked on Shabbos. I had the luck that I didn't. I'm going to have next year. I'm going to be an intern, and I got a Shomer Shabbos internship. That was important to me because you come up with a lot more of shilas, you know.
You're never even there's no possibility of you ever having to.
So I'm in the middle of nowhere. Pittsburgh is in the middle of nowhere, and was only 2 religious Jews in my class, and because of that, we worked it out that we actually did not. I had to come in during my surgery for lectures, so I walked into the area of the hospitals for lectures, but I didn't have to, and I actually had to give a lecture, which most people used PowerPoints, and I did not. I just said, "Look, I'm going to give you handouts, and I'll just give you my talk." But so we got lucky. I mean, if you're in New York, and you're just in one of these med schools, and there's 30 Jews in your class, you're in Einstein, you're going to have problems. And so
that's when I was choosing to go to dental school. That was a huge factor also. Remember, I knew if I had to go to, there were stories if you go to NYU or Columbia, so they're going to end up giving you tests on Yom Tovim, and then especially when you do residency, they don't care about. There's a lot of Jews, they're not going to care. But you go somewhere where there's no Jews, then usually you end up lucking out. They're much more.
What?
Why?
A lot of Jews, they don't. It doesn't matter.
because there's so many of them that they can't.
They all don't want to
They
work
all
on
trying to be
Shabbos.
goyim on Yom Tov.
They all don't want to work on Shabbos. They don't want any or on what do you call it on.
I understand. So then why not reschedule tests for the entire class?
Well, they're not accommodating.
Right at all.
They're not accommodating.
The less honestly.
Why be?
I know it's
fine,
I know it's
Why be accommodating by?
but they're less sympathetic. I know it's counterintuitive. They're less sympathetic when there's more from Jews.
So
less
what do they
sympathetic.
do? So what do they do?
They give the test. Oh, so they'd say, listen, you're gonna take a makeup exam, and then the makeup exam was always a nightmare. Always. But I know when I went to dental school, it was a mechaya. I said, listen, I'm an Orthodox Jew. Oh wow, you're Orthodox, so we have to do everything in our power to make sure that you're taken care of, and we never will infringe on your religious liberties, etc.
Where were you?
In South Florida. I went to the point. I mean, on the same like since I'm a Kohen, was another reason why I wouldn't consider going to medical school. I ran into Shalos about even in dental school. It was changing a lot in dental school, but in dental school there was an issue of anatomy, right? So anatomy, I don't remember. It was anatomy class in Nova was on Fridays. So I said, listen, Fridays Erev Shabbos. It's Friday afternoons. Perfect. Friday's Erev Shabbos. I said, listen, it's going to be very difficult for me to go to an anatomy lab on Erev Shabbos. You're not going to prepare for Shabbos. No problem. You know, oh, you're the Orthodox Jew. Please, take as much time as you need. You know? I'm serious, but it does work that way. I've heard tons of stories of guys who end up in institutions with lots of Jews, and they get a lot less sympathy as a result. So it's something to think about.
I mean, when you hear the same story 100 times, how sympathetic can you be? You're like, oh, not this again.
I don't know. I got it, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I didn't have to work on Shabbos, but I had to think about situations also if I was going to work on Shabbos. And there's a whole question: can you be Machal Shabbos for a guy? And there's heterim because if you're not Machal Shabbos for them, they're not going to treat Jews, and then ultimately Jews won't be treated well. But that's always seemed like a funny heter to me, and I didn't really go through the sugya, so I can't actually comment if that's an illegitimate reason. But it always struck me as funny. But I thought of, let's say I had to work on Shabbos. I said, I could definitely Ava, which is the Mishum Ava, because of hatred of the Jew, that's a heter that the Rabbanan gave. So I said, I figured I could probably be, if I could get everything to be a Durabanan, right, then Mishum Ava should really kick in. So the Durabanans I wouldn't be chayv in the Durabanans on Shabbos. So as a med student, what we really do, we're not really cutting. I could always, or drawing blood, which would be malacha. And really, you're just kind of helping out the other doctors, like the residents. They tell you to see your patients and sort of write notes. That was like sort of the biggest thing. And so I figured I could always say I can't turn on the light, and I can't, they wouldn't care about that if I didn't draw blood one time. But they do want you to write notes. So I figured that though. Also, one benefit we had to be in the 21st century is that most hospitals have electronic medical records, and electronic medical records are all on the computer. Now, while it's true that turning on a light on Shabbos would be eish, right? That's only true by like an incandescent bulb, right? Does everyone know what an incandescent bulb is? Mm-hmm. What? With a filament, right?
It's really hot.
It gets really hot and it glows. That's gachel shel machis. That's a form of eish, but we don't have those really anymore. I mean, most LEDs are not gachel shel machis. They're not incandescents, right? So LED screens are not really eish midoraisa. Maybe midorabanan you would say that they were, and electricity, it's not eish. And it's the shita that says that it's like bona, like because you're making a circuit. I think that's a very hard svara to say how that's bona. So we consider it's actually funny because they don't really know how to categorize electricity. But at best, pure electricity without lights is a durabanan. So I figured I could, now I could basically use the computer. But I also figured that but to type notes though, it's ksiva, right? It's writing, but it can't be a real ksiva like writing on a piece of paper. So I figured all that could be basically midrabanan at best. And since Mishum Eva, right, because they'll say, oh, this medical student doesn't, they're not going to treat Jews right, and the whole social phenomenon would really be a problem for Jews. That they, and I talked over with my father, and basically, we concluded that that I could probably do all those things. Yeah.
So turning on the laptop would be wrong because the lecture Durabanan.
Well, yeah, I mean it's a Durabana. You can't do it if you have no reason, right? But I'm saying the heter of Ava, right? If the hatred and the anti-Semitism that would come to the Jews, or the Jews wouldn't ever be allowed into medical schools, all that would seem that that would matter. That would be a pretty good heter for in order to to be able to do it for med school. Yeah.
What is the story exactly why tablet writing or ledger writing isn't right? I mean, why is it that much different than like drawing in the sand?
Drawing in sand, I think, is also midrabanan.
Is it midrabanan?
Because it's not
So only
it's not permanent.
is actually
What?
permanent.
Yeah, permanent writing with DO on. Yeah, and I figured even let's say I need to write notes. I also figured let's say I need to write notes. If you write with, it's an open Rambam. If you're a righty and you write with your left hand, it's klachiyat. It's derban.
I'm really gonna read your notes.
Okay, but maybe I could do slowly. I mean,
Right, but if you get to the point where you're able to read what you write with your left hand, doesn't it become?
No, it's because it's not your normal. It's in the Misa. It's not the efficient way that you do the Misa.
Oh, okay. So I'll save my left hand for Shabbos.
Right, exactly. I mean, Yorvin is derbanan if you don't have a heter, but
Am I allowed to practice during the week?
Wait, is pencil considered permanent, or that would also be derban?
It fades.
Particles.
So it's not focus.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
What if you're an ambidextrous?
That was really dumb.
Then it might not be kalachayat. If you really could write with, then you're right. So
So they have here like this institution called one second ago. They have this place called Summit. You guys
We went
went.
there last year.
Oh, did you go this year?
Is this
so-
the invisible ink?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what they do is their whole
Or grandma.
objective in life is to create all these.
but is it grama if they set it up that it's going to happen that way?
That's a good question. But I'll show you the website. They have like these keyboards for doctors.
Right.
These keyboards where they have like this infrared beam that goes underneath the back and forth. So this way, whenever you press a key, they claim it's only because you press the key down and then the infrared beam crosses it, right? That activates the computer. Rather than when you press it, when you press an only keyboard, by definition, it makes the word appear on the screen.
Right.
Right. So what they claim is by pressing it down, you're not doing anything.
Freaking
The beam's going by.
Yeah, but but it's only
You know what? That's grama or grade, right? Those kind of things. Right?
Why is that?
I'll show you. I'll
But
show
if
you
that's the
website.
way they.
I'll show you
That's
website
not
later on.
okay.
It's,
I thought always got like I tell you. I heard about these things. I never looked into them.
Secondary.
Like
It's here. That's what they make.
They're the ones who came with the kosher light?
Yeah.
That was their only comment.
All that's problems.
The hot
gas.
kosher lamp.
They make a thing for
Cover the light.
gas stoves.
oh, like with
Ground
Moshe.
keyboard.
So
Yeah.
you get the ground keyboard?
Everybody's
Yeah.
My assumption is that the Shabbos app doesn't help anything. Correct.
I just found out about that. Actually, this Yom Kippur, a guy showed it to me in shul.
I know.
No, like he had the printout. He had the printout. You know who it was?
Sorry,
From North America, the karate guy.
Andron?
Yeah,
Really?
he was reading about it.
Was
So,
he texting while he was reading it?
no, he wasn't. There was no actual app there, but so I don't know about it. I found out about it, but so I'm not really familiar. Yeah.
Maybe I don't know how long this lecture would be, but could you say maybe ask a non-Jew to record it, so you could listen to it. Then you could write notes after.
Which no. So the lecture you're talking about the lecture that I had to go to.
Yeah.
The lectures weren't. I didn't have to do anything there. I just had to be there.
Oh.
Yeah. That was a different. I'm just saying if I had to ever see a patient and then like write a note about the patient. Like sometimes like
writing notes. Okay.
yeah. The lecture I had to give the lecture. That I walked in. That was easy. I mean it's not I just gave a little talk. It was 10 minutes, but and I just gave handouts. Like we worked around it and they were pretty good to us. But yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just curious to know what you hold. So this whole profession, though, it seems to be you enter yourself into an arena where it's very hard or very troublesome halachically. What is the? I guess what's the?
Hazard.
Not the hazard.
Well, I'm going to dermatology for that reason. Dermatology doesn't see patients on Shabbos
Right, so afterwards it gets
because we like to be on vacation as much as
You're
possible.
saying to go to medical
So
school.
I'm saying that the whole process of becoming a doctor.
Oh.
So is that like a? I mean, I just want to know like why is that, or why would that be considered proper for a?
But well, it's not improper until you get hit with the problem, right?
But you know the problems are going to be there. I'm saying.
I mean, you didn't. I mean, a guy who never worked a Shabbos.
Well, not yet. I'm saying.
I know, but
Well, so that's not like.
saying I'm not.
Like
I worked it out that I'm not gonna. Next year, I'm not gonna work a Shabbos. I'm gonna be an intern, full fledged, and I'm not gonna work a Shabbos.
So it's broaden the scope to the general.
But you can't just osser things like that. Say, oh, don't go into a
I'm
profession.
just like wondering what would be the, like why
What's
would
the
so
approach?
why wouldn't a fringe you pick a different profession? Just stay away from doctor entirely because of the problems.
I don't know if a person is obligated to do that. I mean, it doesn't until he has. It's not like, look, people when they came to America took jobs that they'd have to work on Shabbos, and then they come in and got fired every week, right? So maybe you do that, but does that mean he couldn't take the job to make the money during the week? But I'm saying you can't just. That's not a method to just osser any possibility, right? So what I'm saying is that you have when the way the Jew has to work in this world in anything. I mean, what halacha says when you are confronted with an issue, you don't know what to do. You go to your Rav, and you know, either you study the area and you understand how the halakhic process works, and you could determine what's the best way to do it, or you go to someone who can. That's you pick a Rav who you know, or you through your mind tells you this guy has the right approach of analysis, right? And you say, well, what can I do? What can I do? Let's see if we can work it out. What does the Gemara say? The Gemara says koach deheter adif, right? That the strength, it's better that you to matter things, to right? So you can't just, the Torah doesn't want you to just osser everything.
No, I'm wondering what's the, there has to be some sort of philosophical idea behind why it's still worth it to engage in this profession, because there are matras, but those hetters are sort of b'diavad because you're a doctor. Meaning,
wait, a person
like
can't.
if you weren't a doctor, you would definitely not be allowed to use Ava and Derban. It's only because you're a medical student. So I want to know what is the philosophical idea behind a firm Jew being a doctor, or as you see it, the benefit of a firm Jew being a doctor, which outweighs the halachic.
I mean, I was just saying, but a person has to, let's say in anything, okay?
Right.
Let's say it wasn't a doctor. First of all, doctor does save lives, they're pretty important.
So that would be a.
But let's say you were doing anything. Why can't a person be in? Why does it have to be that it has to be a philosophical reason? My personality, I have to make a parnasa.
Right.
Right? I'm obligated to do that. Let's say you marry a woman, right? It says in the ksuba that you're obligated
As opposed
to
Man.
Sorry.
not as opposed to, or you could just not marry anybody.
Right.
We're really limiting our choices here.
Sorry.
It's not me.
You set up as so.
What?
You constructed it as so.
I did. It was a colloquial. It wasn't a.
Okay.
Understood.
So anyway, no. A person has to make money. I mean, it's actually the Ram says you get om haba, right? It says in order to to make a parnasa, the pasuk says ashrecha v'tovlach. Happy are you, and it's good for you. And the Torah Shebal Peh says ashrecha b'olam hazeh v'tovlach b'olam haba. Right? It's going to be good for you in olam haba. So you get olam haba. It's a reality. It's a reality. And since it's a reality, going out and being involved in economic realities, then you will get olam haba.
So I don't think.
Wait, 1 second. Let me finish my point. Right? So, and a person has to understand themselves, and has to understand what they're going to be good at, and engage in that reality.
Okay, so that would have been the answer would be you see yourself as being successful as a doctor, maybe not so successful in other areas of life, and that's why you decided it was
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, the reason I chose dermatology in particular is because I saw by my father that he had a great life. He was always home. He had time to learn, right? We had dinner every night, and we would discuss what I learned in school, and he'd question it, and he'd teach. He'd teach me. He was able to do that. So that's why I picked dermatology, because I think there's good opportunity for that in my particularly. That's why. Dylan, so.
Yes, I don't think you were suggesting that you should, a little off the corner, somebody suggesting once you enter into, once you're of age and you need to make a parnasa, I guess, what should the firm approach be? Now this, I guess, will never be X equals 2, but I guess you're looking for your own firm approach to how to weigh that halachic tensions you're going to put yourself in, but a decent parnasa at the same time. Like at what point does enough parnasa make that okay? Because I'm saying if I keep adding the halachic tensions, eventually you also agree it's just too much. But whatever instance in
what
this
does that
area,
mean?
okay.
I mean, you to talk in generalities is
enough times you know that whatever field you're going into, you're going to have to work on Shabbos. At a certain point in time, I think you'd also agree that this is not a field fitting for. Let's try and make it as close around you as possible. I can't do this. I'm over on Shabbos 3 times, whatever it is. I can do another profession, make close to the parnasa, and not risk and just not get myself in all that halachic trouble. So even
right, or figure out.
So what exactly? I'd just like to hear a little more words, more verbalized. Well, what is the from approach to that weighing? Is that just that simple? You're just like, I just gotta make parnasa. I'm sure there's.
I mean, you have one second. I mean, you have a halachic system, right?
We're getting very huge right now. You can do other work in life. I don't know if you need to like pick people's pop pimples for a while. I don't know if you need to do that.
But what's wrong with popping pimples, though?
Nothing wrong. You could do something else.
But I'm not.
It doesn't involve as many halachic tensions as the other thing.
But I don't understand. What am I doing that's wrong?
You're voluntarily entering an arena where you miss mincha, let's say. I mean, have you ever missed a Shabbos? Let's get it out there.
Yeah.
Because of your work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if you need to be a Haredi buffer and say after one time I need to switch the profession. Right. At a certain point in time, similar things that you enter into an arena where you're going to miss
well,
things.
If that is the nature of the thing, that's right. If the nature of the job demands that, right, where you're going to then you'll tell me that might be bemazed.
But it wasn't bemazed that you took that upon yourself.
It might be bemazed if that's the nature.
Bemazed means intentional.
Oh, so it wasn't made.
So saying if that's the nature of the thing.
Okay. Oh, so you're arguing? Okay, so you're agreeing with me.
Then yeah, but the nature. But as long as it's not the nature of the thing, I mean, there's plenty of jobs that you're going to do, like that Rabbi Ginsburg said.
Right, that don't necessarily have this.
No, that do have it. No matter what, that you might be in a closing for 6 hours. I mean, mincha shkia is at what 4:30 in the winter in New York City. Right?
At one point somewhere it's 4:30.
It's 4:30. So how many people could stop?
No, but
just do. I'll just say do something else.
No, but again,
everything. Everything's.
Is it like that? Is it like that? Are we getting too meta? Are we getting too meta? Are you sure? Are you sure?
He mentioned it, and I know he would emphasize this. You're also missing the other side of the equation, which is that even let's assume even in the halachic scenarios he's presenting. But you also have to take into account the overall objective of,
just the benefit.
No, I'll give you an example. Let's say a guy becomes an attorney, okay? So if a guy goes to law school, he's not worried about, when you're in law school, you've got plenty of time to learn, and you're not worried about being Mechal Shabbos or any field issues. However, when you become an attorney, if you work for any high-powered firm, you will not be home, and you'll not learn. It'll be very difficult to learn if you become a corporate attorney. Right. I know plenty of corporate attorneys, and they don't learn. So now the question is,
that sounds like a good job.
Huge thing. No, that's a huge thing. One second, is a guy over in Isser? The guy becomes a lawyer.
Perfection. I don't care about your little chiyuv right now. Let's talk about perfection.
So and all.
So you have to understand. But if it's not, if there's no problem in the halachic system, right? So now you
So
have
that's
to.
the problem. You're not learning as much Torah. What do you mean?
Oh, so 1 second. So now you have to look at your own perfections.
So that's what I'm not asking you. I'm not trying to say you're over an issue right now. I'm trying to hear how you approach it. That's
so
what I'm asking
so you have to.
And what's
Okay.
your from approach to this? I'm saying,
So
for example,
well,
I'm very down to say you make a bunch of money in dermatology, maybe that opens up more time for learning. I'm not saying there aren't heavy
Right.
benefits in dermatology too.
Right.
But I'm saying the from man needs to weigh these things. I'm asking, how did you
So that's
approach
okay.
this?
Okay, fine. So for me, I like to learn. That is, I enjoy it, and it's the greatest pastime for me. In fact, I was in medical school,
Thank God it matters.
and medical school, you'll think that there's a lot of things that you learn. There's a tremendous amount of God's creation that you learn. However, learning a Tosfos was more enjoyable. And every night, I had a chavrusa. If I had a big test and I had to study, I took off a couple days prior to the test, but I had a standing chavrusa every night. And that was more enjoyable than learning the facts. When I would go to lectures and I would learn a tremendous amount of facts, but it didn't engage my mind. And every once in a while, once I amassed a ton of facts that they presented, I would sit back and I would reflect on the system as a whole, and I said, wow, that's amazing how God set up this the body or whatever organ system we were learning. But it wasn't as pleasurable as going and the analysis of learning. And so for me, I like science. I like mathematics. I knew I could do dermatology. I enjoyed dermatology. I saw it growing up, and I also saw that it set up a great lifestyle, right? And it was not going to be sacrificing. I mean, there's a lot of things to take into account also in terms of how much money you need. It's not just about materialism. It's also about, are you going to live in a place where your kids don't feel bad, because they don't have so much money, and and thank God we did not have those issues. And so everything, just from my experience, it appealed to me, and it worked out practically. And for me, it was the most rational approach.
The bottom line, you held this. I was looking for you to say it, but you're saying whatever the from benefits outweigh the from negatives. What I'm saying, but I was looking for more of that elucidation.
Well, I don't know what
you did.
But I don't.
In terms of, again,
you asked me.
This is a murky area, but you don't have to go into it. But you willingly walked in this area. So the question is, why didn't you just go to this time?
Well, the Torah doesn't tell you not that areas are off limits. The Torah says, "Ask a Shiloh."
I'm not saying it's absolutely usher, but
because
we're out for perfection. If this tile seems to be better from one perspective, then the Havamina is, why don't you go to this tile? So then you had to say, well, this tile is actually better overall. I'm down how supposing that is what you did.
Let's say any area that you choose, any economic area.
I completely agree.
Right, it has to be done with chachma.
For sure.
So let's say you were a finance guy, right, and you went into finance, and you were trading or you were analyzing companies and investing.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have your own set of shilas, but you work it out. But that's not a problem. That's not against the halachic, the derech of the Torah. The derech of the Torah is not to just say there's an area of the world I can't go into.
I need to clarify one premise. Everything is equal except for this thing, okay? I mean, pranasa, happiness to your kids, all that stuff is equal. One has more halachic tensions than the other. Would you not agree that the one that has less halachic tensions is absolutely better to engage in than the other?
No, I would, yeah.
No,
Okay, so I said it exists, you said it doesn't exist. No, it does exist, okay? This is the example. Everything is equal except for this one.
Why can't you study the halacha and understand?
What?
Why can't you study the halacha and understand how to go about it?
It's still a head turn.
No, but at the end of the day, that sounds like a very childish why. That's something a very childish why. That's something a very childish why. Okay, at the end of the day, at a certain point in time, strafe is strafe. Well, just learn just don't need it.
Strafe, you don't need it.
No, I'm saying at a certain time, it just.
So there are times when you can't do certain
fall
things.
Off the cliff. That is how gravity
goes. So certain times you have to make the sacrifice.
Well, okay, correct. But
so let's say
if everything's equal, when the only difference in A and B is A is more risky. Would
I
you
don't
not
know.
agree?
You may use these terms are risky, but these are not
You might
defined terms.
miss mincha. Very, very different.
you
You
need
do
to have-
not have time for mincha. No, it's very different. You do have time for mincha in this case 2 times a week, and you only don't have time for mincha in B 1 time a week. This is this is
I don't know.
Not
I don't know
right
if the
now.
quantity of in that situation is a determining factor.
Does mincha matter?
Mincha does matter.
Okay, is 2 times missing it worse than 1 time missing it?
Like that.
I know, but no, but like you said before,
I feel like Tyler, you get that, man. I don't know.
the nature of the thing. It's not like when he opens up his manual for medical school, for Pitt Medical School, and it says you'll be missing mincha the following days of the week: Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Right, I told you before. I said there's not every
That's so ridiculous. Your whole thing is not a real question.
Every day could be a different day. You know, it's just a question.
So you were denying. So you were denying that there's any variance in the level of mergeability of fromness of professions. You deny that there's a difference between of professions, of the ability to allow for different kinds of work. You're denying that. You're denying that.
There's a certain point where you go into a profession. Let's say.
Well, the Torah. What's that?
Do you deny or accept? Do you deny or accept?
That's called the Shabbos profession. You're right. You should go into that. That's not a good profession to go into. For sure.
I like the gray. Let's talk about the gray. So here's my question. So how do you approach the gray?
That's how you. Each situation is different. You have to study the situation.
Okay, I want to ask you, Brisbane. I want to see you. I want to see your example. You told me some weird thing about your kids are happy. I don't care about that. I want to know about how do you weigh, again, let's say,
I don't have
perfection
versus
whatever those non-from categories were. Your from categories versus the other
necessities. He took into account. I don't think you're hearing what he said. He took into account his life for what for him made the most sense. Now, 1 second.
How? Break it down for me.
He did. He said
the weird thing about like I don't know, go into the ball game. They'll be happy here. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear about how much Torah learning you do versus how much mincha you miss.
Let me ask you a question.
From scale, not this one.
It's not a quantitative thing. Let's say you need all day, and you can't come up with an idea, right? You mean you shouldn't work?
Sorry, what was that?
You have to understand yourself. You have to understand.
You're saying these like vague Eastern teachings. I want to hear like.
Quantify it.
I know there's no method of quantification.
Let's say you could.
Wait, no, I'm not looking for extra. I'm looking for.
Let's go to the next level. Prove the point of knowing yourself. There's plenty of jobs you can go into, and let's.
I'm not denying.
Listen. But even in how you weigh it out, forget the halachic tensions. That's one issue, right? But then what about the fact of, let's say you go into a profession where you know it's just ego gratification the entire time. So it could be a profession where, halachically speaking, you never run into.
For sure. Guess what? You gotta weigh that.
So how would you know? So say you have to know yourself.
I'm not saying you. I'm not sorry. I'm not coming here saying you did wrong.
I don't think I did wrong. Even if you said I did wrong, I don't feel judged by you. You don't have to apologize. I'm just telling you.
It was a little suspicious how you responded. But anyway, so I want your just a little more of your okay. My own critique of your answer was that you told me more about.
Why don't you give me a situation that you would be involved in, and then I could tell you how I would approach it.
I said you weigh how much toiling you to do.
No, what? You have to give me facts. Give me
I
real.
just told you how much toiling you can do. Time you can do Torah learning and good Torah learning versus how many Zman Tefillas you miss. So that sort of way. Not like the kids. I'm not denying that that's an important category. Kids are happy, but I'm looking.
You're telling me what's a greater mitzvah of V'higisa bo yom v'layla or
exactly. The categories on one side versus categories on the other side. And I don't want.
Well, let me ask you a question. Right? Didn't they say by Moshe Rabbeinu? Right? Everyone else was being involved in the mitzvah of asking their neighbors for stuff, right? That was a commandment that God said, go ask and borrow kalim from the Egyptians, right before you leave. Everyone's involved in that. Moshe was involved in taking the bones of Yosef. Oh, so why didn't Moshe do the mitzvah?
I made a calculation.
It's a good question. He made a call. I'm sure he had a certain method. So I want a little more.
So Moshe's he made a calculation. He understood himself, and he said this would be a greater perfection. He was confronted with 2 mitzvahs, right? He could not do both of them, and he made a calculation about which one would affect him in a more positive way.
I was looking for a little bit more reductionism here. I'm not denying that you actually hold that yourself.
I don't know if you necessarily can. I think that's dependent on the person.
No, I agree with all that. I want to hear a little more your thing. You just kind of said I made that call, but which categories leaned which way? Not just the kids happy at the ball game. Like how much, you said dermatology make more money, I can do more shira, I can learn more Torah. Okay, I'll miss mincha, but that seems to be not as important as Torah. Like I want to hear that.
You want to know what I saw in dermatology?
The from weigh-in.
From weigh-in?
You're making a false assumption. The assumption you're making is that the fact that you would miss mincha, right? Which again, is not part of the job to miss mincha. It's not
It's
part
a circumstance.
Of the job. It could happen. That's not. You're making a sign that's a sacrifice he's making for the learning. That's not how you approach it. That's how you approach.
That's an accident.
Right,
That's an accident. That's an accident to the thing. It happens. It's a happenstance.
Are you defining action by you don't desire that outcome?
No,
My close my hands in the fire.
the design doesn't demand that.
Say it again?
The design of the thing doesn't demand it. That's why it's an
Your
accident.
schedule says, "Hey, buddy, you're missing mincha."
My schedule didn't say that.
Did it ever say that?
No.
It never. Did
No.
you ever know? It never said that.
No.
It never said it. I'm certain that since they asked me, you will miss mincha. Rabbi Wolf. I don't think. I also think it said that.
Pittsburgh doesn't know I'm a rabbi, so they didn't say in the handbook. It didn't say Rabbi Wolf.
Signed by the deed.
Is your work not even? Is are there no intention to work now? Now maybe I don't believe what you said earlier. Now it's like there's no problem with work at all. It's like there's not, I don't know if I hold your shema. I have to shema so quietly. Maybe you have all this time. Do you have tensions or not? I don't understand. Are there tensions in this work
I
or
did
not?
have situations that came about.
Okay, so
and I dealt with those situations. I don't understand from a halachic standpoint. I came up with those. I don't understand your question.
So I'm asking what you
I told you
said I made a judgment call.
I
want the reduction.
Basically, what he's trying to say, he's approaching as if assuming that you're bidi evidence, or you're entering to bidi evidence.
No, I didn't say. Oh, for mincha?
Yeah, that's a bidi evidence.
Well, as a bidi, just fine. I missed it.
No, but that's what Tashlumin. No, that's the thing.
There's a system like that. I don't understand. The Torah set up a system for that. The Rabbanan understood that is man.
Okay, fine.
And man is going to be confronted with this in his
Right,
day.
you're not locking in perfection.
Okay, fine. That's not what goes over.
And now you have to make, and it is a perfection to look at the situation when it comes about and figure out halachically how to be Mekayim the mitzvah. That is the perfection.
Because
that per se is the perfection. Is the figuring it out.
Because it allows you to learn Torah.
No, because you confront it. No, forget the
job.
Torah in and of itself. In and of itself.
Wait, you're telling me that from a Wall Street banker, it's just Ragib Olam Haba every time he makes a sale, even though it's not a fixed Torah study at all? That's what you're telling me right now.
Yes, it's a reality to be involved.
Is this New Judaism? I don't know.
Let's say a person's not a learner.
Yeah.
Right? He can be Mekayim his mitzvah, he gives him Yom L'Layla with Kriya Shema twice a day. Right? Yotze. That's all he needs. Doesn't have to say another word. Okay, so now he has a different chiyuv.
I don't chiyuv, I want that perfection.
No. He has a different chiyuv and perfection that he gets Olam Haba for, and it's called being involved in the economic realities of life. That's a mitzvah. Might not be written down in 613, right? The Rambam's not in the Minyan HaMitzvos, but it's a mitzvah because it's intelligent and it's a reality.
Hold on.
And it's a
mitzvah. Just make up a mitzvah, I'm not really sure.
It's not a mitzvah in Minyan HaMitzvos. But in terms of the Derech HaTorah and perfection and being an intelligent human being, right? That is a mitzvah.
The Derech HaTorah is something I'm really confused here. I thought making money is good insofar as it leads to Torah study, not making money l'shma.
We'll come back later on.
So from